Hey there, and welcome to my studio. Part of what we're talking about today is increasing your productivity, increasing your, I like to say, your batting average in the practice room. If you've got any questions, any comments, anything that I need to clarify as we go, much like I do in my live stream lessons with students, just put them in the chat below. And as we go, I'll answer your questions, try and clarify things that we talk about. So let's just jump right into it. Let's just get rid of the preamble, right? So the practice room, it's the thing that seems to be, you would think would be the most intuitive thing. You just come down, you practice, and then you go and you do the rest of your day. You practice a little bit every day, you get a little bit better every day. At some point you turn around and you play a whole lot better, whether it's just playing by yourself, whether it's playing on gigs, if you're in a band. It seems like it's kind of a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. You get into the practice room, you do some stuff, and then you get a little bit better every single day. But apparently that's not the case. In fact, for a lot of people, it isn't the case. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and strategies that you can use in the practice room to make your time more productive, hopefully to increase your batting average with the things that you're working on so that you progress faster and get just less frustrated, maybe even have a little more fun in the practice room, because practicing is either incredibly fun for you or it's incredibly not fun for you. I haven't met anybody that's really in the middle that's indifferent about practice. Either they hate to practice, so they don't really practice. They come downstairs wherever their setup is and they jam and they just play along to tunes, and if they learn something new, then great. If they don't, then great. But then 6 months goes by, a year goes by, heaven forbid 10 years goes by, and you really haven't progressed all that much. And I have students ask, well, Brian, why am I not getting better at this? I play drums. Some people will tell me they play drums every day and they wonder why they don't get better. Well, there's a difference between playing and practicing. There's a couple of good books that I'm going to point you towards. The first one is a book called Peak by Anders Ericsson, and it's where the 10,000 hour rule comes from that Malcolm Gladwell talked about in his book Outliers. If you read the actual research where that comes from, you find out a lot more. There's deliberate practice, there's purposeful practice, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today as well. There's another book that I'm almost finished with now that I've seen this research in a lot of other places. It's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it's about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. And so sometimes you can have a fixed mindset about your practice and really limit how much you can get done and how much you can accomplish for yourself, or how many roadblocks you hit just on your mindset. So those are two books that if you want to start to work through them, they're not about drumming specifically, but the concepts in those books are based on research for how we think, how we learn. There's one other one by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I know I'm butchering that name. It's an Indian name, and it's a book called Flow. It talks about how to get into a flow state. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, we may not talk about flow state directly today, but we're going to talk about things that are going to help you get into a flow state as you practice so that you get more out of this. So you'll notice that I'm talking a lot at the beginning of this, and that's one of the keys to great practice, is that you've got to put some thought into what your practice time needs to look like, into what your environment needs to be, into how you set yourself up to win with practice. So let's talk about a few of those things. The first thing that I want to talk about is the setup that I have here. Now, I don't practice in this room. I actually have another room. Paul, that's on the stream right now, he's been in my lesson room that's right next to the live room here. There's two different kits in there. There's a rock kit and a jazz kit. Very purposeful reason why I have two completely different setups, because they cover the two halves of the things that I work on as a practicer of the drums, as a practicing drummer. And also, it helps me when I do my lessons to cover, sonically be able to cover what a student might want to do. If we're working on jazz, I'm not going to put them on the big double bass drum kit with all the rock and roll cymbals. We're going to play something that sonically is going to give them what they're looking for. And much like this setup that you see here, you'll notice that there's a lot of stuff kind of in place already. And this is going to be one of the first hacks that I'm going to show you, is that in your practice space, instead of having to go look for the things that you need when it comes time to practice, you need to set up your practice space so that everything you need is already there, or the few things you don't have, like my water. I've got my water sitting right here, and I actually have a spare can of water right there. So right here, I've got my water. Sorry to take a drink in your ear like that, but that was for my illustration. So I've got my water. I've got some extra water so that I don't have to go and do those things. My metronome, or any of the things that I'm using to practice along with. I've got a Pro Tools rig over here, which you may not. Over here, you can't see it in this camera. I've got access to my Pro Tools rig here. You may not have that in your practice room, but maybe you have an iPad, and that's where you have your metronomes, your click tracks, you have your drum machines, maybe you have GarageBand, so you can play along on to some stuff, Spotify, any of the things that you may need. You want to have that handy. If you can leave an iPad or a tablet of some sort, or computer, whatever you use, if you can leave it in the space, even better. If not, what I do, and I do this in my practice space, I do this here in my live room as well, I already have all my electricity run so that my cable for my power is already here. If I'm bringing an iPad down, boom, I just plug that power in. I also have my audio connection. I do wear in-ears when I practice a lot of the time. So my ability to monitor microphones and adjust my environment are all right there. I've got the exact same thing in my practice room. I've got a tablet that I can control my volume for things right next to the drum set. It's already plugged in. It's already ready to go. I just have to turn it on. Then I've got my trusty dusty practice pad, not so dusty practice pad right here. And you'll see what I'm doing with the practice pad later. Preferences as to which practice pads I use. This one is actually a prototype I had made a few years ago for what was going to be a Session Ace practice pad. It looks a little bit like a real feel pad, doesn't it? It was just kind of a concept. The difference, it really is what the pad's made out of, not the octagonal design. But anyway, so I have a practice pad. Now, which practice pad do I love? I have a couple that I really prefer. The Real Feel being one, the ProLogix being the other. But I purposefully don't have either one of those here today. The best practice pad for you to use is the one that you have with you. So leave a practice pad of some sort right there in your practice room. It's not one that you take to gigs. It's not one that you take to school with you. It's not one that you take around when you're hanging out. Whatever you're doing, this practice pad lives in your practice room, and it's right by your drums. Another hack that I have that I will show you really quickly before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of playing is I actually have 3 notebooks here, and you'll see why in a second. I have one notebook that stays at my rock drum kit, and this is all of the things that I'm currently practicing on that kit in that environment. For me, since I spend part of my time practicing on my rock kit, and I spent part of my time practicing on my jazz kit, I have 2 different notebooks for the things that I practice, so that I don't even have to go and pick up the notebook and carry it over. So in this notebook, in this particular notebook, there may be material from 10 or 12 different books that are all aggregated into one place. Now, I could have those 10 or 12 books sitting right here, but especially as I'm trying to utilize my time more effectively in the practice room, leafing through and finding the right book and which page was I on, all of that takes up mental bandwidth. It takes up your physical time in the practice room. And if you only have 30 minutes to an hour, then every minute counts. So what I'll do with any method method book I'm working out of is I actually will photocopy the page that I'm working on with exercises. If I'm using particular exercises, like this is a page out of stick control, and for some things I was working on, this was a page I was working out of. So instead of having stick control here, I have a photocopy of that page. So this is from a period of time when I was working on a lot of linear concepts. And so the Gary Chafee book I was working out of, instead of having the entire book here and maybe either being overwhelmed by that book and all the stuff in it, or even just the amount of time it takes to open to the correct page and find where it was that I was working at the day before, don't have to worry about that. I just open right up to this page. Everything in my practice notebook is sequentially in order according to how I will want to practice it. The one thing that I've started showing students more now, if you've got multiple families of things to work on, I've shown this to Paul, is to get some dividers and put those topics in their own dividers. So if you've got linear concepts, groove concepts, fill concepts, independence concepts, instead of just having the pages loose, even if they're in order in here, cordon them off into their own section with some dividers. All the stuff that's in this book is actually linear, so that's why I didn't really need that. Used to, I kept a separate practice log. So I pulled this one off the shelf because this is an old one. So this is one of my old practice logs, my book that I kept my practice log in. I used to have a separate book for my practice log. What I found was, again, in trying to save time and trying to save space, I didn't have room to set two of these books on a music stand. I've sort of combined them. So now the practice journal that I have is where I store all of those pages when I've filled them up. Like, for example, here's I wish there was an easier way to show this to you than to hold it up. That's what I'll do, though. I'll just hold it up so you can see it. So on the left side here, I have my practice journal. It's just a piece of notebook paper. There's nothing on that side. And as I go, I've got the date. I've got the exercises I worked on. I'll show it to you. This is an older one. I've got the exercises I worked on. I've got what I used to play along with and the tempos that I did. And I also make some notes. So that's what one of my pages, and you'll notice there's a date for each one of these. If you go through my practice log, you'll see that it's not sequential by day. We're going to talk about that later, why I don't practice the exact same thing every single day. But the idea here is that I've got a page to the left that is my practice log, helps me keep up with what I've done and how far I've gone, and the material is on the right side, so I can just have it all on one stand. Makes it a lot easier, and it ensures that I'm going to actually do that with my practice. And you'll notice if I flip over to the next page, I flip that page, it's the exact same thing. Here's the second page I was working out of from this Gary Chafee book. It's the same concept with a different set of exercises, and there's my practice log on the other side. So I have this in my practice room, and it sits right next to my drum set. Sometimes it stays on the stand. Other times, if I'm working on music or doing other stuff in my practice room, it may go by the side. But it always stays right next to my drum set. I never have to go looking for this book. This book is always there. Now, as I work through a page, and as I get done with that material, if I want to, for sentimentality, if I just want to be able to look back and see that progress, I may save this page. Often I just throw it away, to be honest. The page that I want to keep is I want to keep this one. If I've done a bunch of writing on a page, like I've done some writing on this one, I may keep this. If I haven't written on this page at all, I pitch it. I throw it away. I've already got the book. I don't need the photocopy page. But I do like to keep these in a loose leaf notebook so that I can go back, I can look at my progress. If I ever revisit a topic a few years later, I can see where I was before. And it's really just a good way to catalog And look at your progress. At some point, I may look and see how long did it take me to work through a particular concept, and I may do some analysis. Is there something I could have done to make this faster? Is there something I didn't understand at the time that I understand now that would help me with subsequent pages out of that book? There's a lot of great reasons to hang on to this. And I also use it for ideas with students too. If I'm kind of at an impasse with a student on working on a concept, why can't they get this concept? Sometimes I'll return to my practice logs and go, how did I get through it? Because I may not remember. After 35 years of practice, I don't remember everything about what I've learned or how I learned it. So it's a great way to look at that. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out because we're going to use this page in just a second to do some work on our hacks here. I'm just going to set that aside. This other notebook that I have that I'll show you real quick. So this is the notebook that sits next to my jazz drum set, and this is all the stuff that I've been working on in my jazz lessons, and it's a very different setup because this isn't self-directed. This was this material that's in this notebook is actually from taking lessons with a great jazz drummer who's now a friend. And so transcriptions, exercises, there is some practice routine stuff in here as well. Structure of this book's a little different, but I also practice this thing a little different. All right, so let's talk about another great hack that hopefully will hit you where you live. Right here on this table, I have my phone. A lot of my students use their phone for their metronomes or some of the music they play along with Spotify. I see a ton of drummers using their phone for their Spotify or their Apple Music. Here's going to be my hack that you're either going to absolutely do this and it's going to change everything for you, or you're not going to do it at all and you're going to keep having the same problems. Do not put your phone on airplane mode. Here's what I want you to do with your phone. If I had a garbage can, I'd probably just throw this thing away. All right, so you're actually going to get up. Watch this. I'm not going to bother to put my phone on airplane mode. I'm going to get my phone, and I'm going to go around here. I'm not setting my phone across the room. I'm going to open the door to the room next door. Sometimes I'll walk and leave this thing across the house. One of the greatest practice hacks that you can do for yourself to increase your productivity in the practice room. Get rid of your phone. I'll say that again. Get rid of your phone. Put it in the other room. For me, even if I put it on silent, if I'm practicing, I have a sixth sense about when my phone is vibrating with a text message, some kind of alert, some kind of email, something on social media. If that phone is anywhere in the room with you, it's going to pull your focus. So just get rid of it. Use a tablet. Now at this point, you can use, I have one in the other room that I use all the time. You can get Android tablets for $99. If you need something to play Spotify, you need something that has tempo on it or some other metronome, you can get cheap Android tablets for $100 or less. If you have an iPad, that's awesome. Use your iPad to do those things. If you like laptops, use laptops. It doesn't matter to me what the tool is that you use. Just don't use your phone. That's not me preaching at you. That's something that I've had to do for myself because I know that it pulls focus for me all the time. And if even if I'm in the middle of something and I can kind of sense that my phone is vibrating, it pulls away my attention. And in the way that I'm going to show you to practice today, you really don't want anything to pull your focus. You want to be able to laser focus for as much as you need to in these increments that you're going to focus for. And I haven't touched a stick yet. These are the kinds of things that if you put some of these tips and tricks in place before you even actually start to practice, they're going to revolutionize the results that you get in the practice room. The next thing is you need to decide when you're going to practice. Yeah, decide the week before you practice. Preferably, and I've talked about this before in some of the classes on Drum Corner. You want to find the time of day that you're cognitively most aware. For me, it's early in the morning. It's before noon. If I wait till afternoon, meaning actual noon, 12 p.m. If I wait till after 12 p.m. to practice, I'm not going to get as much out of it. I know that we're live streaming at it's 2:30 now. Believe me, I'm going to have to really work to focus as I'm going through these concepts with you. If this were my practice time, I would really have to work doubly hard. Whereas at 9 or 10 in the morning, I don't have to do that as much. Find when you're most cognitively aware and make that your appointment with yourself. And then once you have that time, if it's 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., for you, it may be 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. The time is totally up to you. The next thing you want to do is pick an amount of time that you're going to practice. I'm doing this very thing now with guitar and with piano. I started going back and relearning how to play guitar and piano. And 10 a.m. is my start time for my guitar practice. 10 a.m., 4 to 5 days a week is my practice time for guitar. And it is my appointment with myself. It's the time that I hold. If something is going to tear me away from that 10 a.m. Where I get to practice my guitar, it better be paying. And it better pay a lot. Otherwise, nothing's going to interrupt that 10 a.m. And just over the course of the last month, if you could see the tips of my fingers, you'd see, wow, he's definitely been practicing every day, because the ends of these two fingers are flat, and I got calluses pretty much on all four of my fingers at this point. And that really only comes from almost daily concerted practice, deliberate practice. So set an appointment with yourself and decide before you even sit down. Don't make it open-ended, because if it's open-ended, you're going to be more inclined to just meander through your practice time. So if you're going to practice for 30 minutes, that's going to help you with structuring the practice time to know how long you need to work on things while you're in the practice room for that particular thing. So pick a time, pick a duration, and settle on that. If you want to start with 30 minutes, and that's what you have, and that's the most amount of time you can pay attention, then start with 30 minutes. And then gradually work yourself up. If you want to work up to 2 hours worth of practice, students I have like Paul that probably need to practice 2 or 3 hours a day, because he's in that phase of life. He's going to be going to college in a few years, and there's a lot of things that he needs to know before he gets there. And so we're trying to cover a lot of ground in his lessons. And so that's one of those where I can't out of the gate say, well, dude, you need to practice 3 hours a day. That's not a productive way for me to encourage him. What I can encourage him to do is, let's start with 30 minutes. Let's really knock out 30 minutes and make it action-packed. And then we'll get to 45 minutes. And then we'll get to an hour and 15 and an hour and 30. You're going to have to build up to this. It's like being an endurance athlete. You're not going to go out the door, especially not in this heat, and run a 5 or a 10K if you've never run before. You need to walk around the block once and make sure that doesn't kill you. If you can't get around the entire block, you just go down a couple of mailboxes and you turn around and come back. And you do that until you go enough mailboxes that you've made it around the entire block. Then you can start looking at miles. Then you can start looking at distance. Then you can look at going from walking to running. We want to really set this up in a way that's going to make you have wins right out of the gate. If you only can pay attention and practice for 5 solid minutes, then the things we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, you're going to do them for 5 minutes. And then you're going to go about the rest of your day. And then hopefully within a span of a few days, maybe a week, it'll be 10 minutes, it'll be 15 minutes. I would rather have a student that practiced every single day for 5 minutes than a student that practiced for 30 minutes once a week. And they're almost the same. If you did 5 minutes a day, 6 days out of 7, you'd have 30 minutes worth of practice. That's going to be better than if you just did 30 minutes in one fell swoop. In the course that I'm putting together on practicing for Drum Corner, which you can find at drumcorner.net, there's going to be a lot of research that we're going to use to show you why that's the case. For now, you're just going to have to take my word for it. It's better to do 5 minutes a day than do 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week, than 30 minutes in one shot and then not touch it the rest of the week. All right, so the next thing is you'll notice I'm wearing a shirt. And if you can't tell, that's Bernard Purdy on the front of my shirt. One of the other things, we're going to talk about this a lot in this course I'm putting together, but I'll use the shirt as an example of some of the strategies and tactics we're going to go into deeper on the site. In this case, I want to be inspired. I want to have something around me. For you, it may be posters on your practice room wall. Anybody that's been in my studio has gone to the bathroom here. You see the entire studio bathroom is decoupaged with all kinds of inspiration, whether it's pictures of great musicians, articles with great musicians, lessons from great musicians and teachers. There's a ton of inspiring stuff in the bathroom. So even when I go to take a potty break, I'm going to find some kind of inspiration. Well, today I'm wearing my inspiration. I'm wearing my Bernard Purdy t-shirt right here that I actually got back in December when I got to see Bernard play and shake his hand for the dozenth time. Every time I meet Bernard, I'm meeting Bernard for the first time, like most of you guys probably. But he's incredibly inspiring. His playing is incredibly inspiring to me. So today I'm wearing a Bernard Purdy t-shirt. It reminds me of one of the reasons why I'm practicing. And so it's that emotional investment that's going to make your practice time a whole lot more effective. If you come downstairs and you have no emotional investment in this and you're just doing it because your teacher said you needed to do it, or you heard me say you needed to do it, or you feel some obligation because you spent a bunch of money on drums, or your parents spent a bunch of money on drums, then you're not going to get a lot of your practice time. So for me, a lot of times I'll wear something inspiring because I don't have posters up on my walls, not in my practice room, not in the studio. It may be that sometimes I'll come in just in an Evans t-shirt or a ProMark t-shirt, or maybe I'm wearing one of my Peisty hats, or I have something on me that reminds me of why I'm down here. I'm down here because I love drums. I love to play this instrument. I love to get just a little bit better hopefully you can feel my enthusiasm, and it's a genuine enthusiasm. I really love this instrument. If there was a way to make money doing nothing but playing this instrument 20 hours a day, I would play this instrument 20 hours a day. I'm lucky that I have a job that allows me to practice most days and play this instrument a whole lot between live gigs in the studio. Very lucky about that. But I don't get to practice 20 hours a day. I'd love to practice 20 hours a day. I might be as good as I want to be at that point. I really am passionate about this instrument. And so these kind of things allow me to lock into that passion, to lock into that enthusiasm. It locks into a thing called beginner's mind. I'm 51 years old now. I started playing drums, actually started as a student of the drums, probably age 14, somewhere between 13 and 14. I hadn't been able to drive just yet. But from the time that I started, I had an incredible enthusiasm for this instrument and to practice this instrument, get better at this instrument, if for no other reason than my own personal satisfaction. So I want you to never lose that beginner's mind, no matter how long you've owned your instrument, no matter how long you've played your instrument, no matter how long you've played music, no matter how many times your heart has been broken from bands that have broken up. I want you to never lose your enthusiasm for this instrument, because it's your enthusiasm that's another hack. It's your emotional connection to this instrument that's going to help take these concepts that you're going to practice, and it's really going to help supercharge them in your brain. Your brain's going to say, I love this so much. It's going to say, this guy, it's going to look down at you and go, this guy or this girl loves this instrument so much. We better pay attention, because this person really does love this. They seem to show up every day doing something with it. Maybe we need to help them out. But one of the things that you can do to supercharge your practice time immediately is to tap in to your enthusiasm. tap in to how much you love this instrument, how much you just love, like having sticks in my hand. When I'm not playing, when I'm watching television, I probably have a pair of sticks in my hand. Nowadays, I probably have a guitar in my hand. I've been trying to do more of that, and that helps. But for years now, for decades, thankfully, I'm married to someone who is very patient and has learned to tune it out. But I may have a practice pad, or I may be just playing on couch pillows while we're watching TV. I'm so enthusiastic about this instrument that I want to keep these sticks in my hands. That's going to be another practice hack for you, is if the only time that you have your sticks in your hands is when you sit down in the practice room to practice, or when you're playing with the people that you play music with, whether it's at the gig. Professional musicians are definitely guilty of this, and I've been guilty about it in the past, where I may go 4, 5, or 6 days sometimes, and I will have not touched my sticks. Maybe the studio has been incredibly busy. I'm in the middle of a project working on something, or maybe I've been on the road for a few days, and the only time I've really played the instrument is when it came time for the gig. You got to find time to have these things in your hands throughout the day. And all through my house, in both of the offices that I have upstairs, my business office, my creative office, there are practice pads and sticks. They're just there. And at any point, if I'm waiting on a video to render, I'm probably either playing on my knee, or I'm probably doing any of these other kinds of stick-related kind of physical exercises, just to shorten the length of time that I go without having sticks in my hands, so that it's not a novel or a new concept when I put these things in my hands at any given point in the day. So I hope that gets us started on a whole new hygiene. We'll call it practice hygiene, that really helps you before you even sit down to play on this instrument. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at some strategies as you're actually playing. And some of these are going to seem incredibly obvious, but having taught now for over 30 years, I've come to find out that in practice, these things are not nearly as intuitive for the students that I have. In some cases, when I share this information with them, it's almost revelatory. Let's look at this first part here. So one thing you'll notice is I have the practice pad here. If I'm going to just do stuff with my hands that relates to the drum set, I'm going to have a practice pad at the drum set. If I'm working on stick and exercises that have nothing to do with the drum set, if I'm working on rudiments, if I'm working on snare drum solos or reading, single line reading, I have a whole other setup that's a practice pad and a music stand and a metronome and all the things that I need. It's all staged in one corner of my practice room, so that I sit at that. Even the stool is there. But if I'm working on anything where I'm going to be incorporating the drum set, in this case, as I do some of my hand warm-ups, I'm going to be moving this left foot a little bit, then I'm going to have the practice pad at the drum set. I want to be sitting in the environment that I'm using these techniques for. And as I do these hand warm-ups, because we're going to work these warm-ups into a full kit warm-up, I'm going to start. If this were my practice time, I would start this session with my hand warm-ups here with the practice pad behind the drum set. So I'm going to pull up a real slow tempo. I'm going to start by just doing some very basic hand exercises. In this case, I'm just going to do some single strokes. And there's a reason why I'm doing this particular warm-up exercise at this particular tempo. But I'm also going to move my left foot. So here we go. So you notice I'm starting slow. Not only am I using my hands in single strokes, I'm going to flip it around for a second. I'm going to start with left hand lead. I'm keeping time with my left foot. So there's a little bit of interdependence, not independence necessarily, but interdependence between the hands and the left foot. And I'm also running through some of my dynamics. In this case, I'm going through right hand lead and left hand lead. Hard to talk while I'm doing this. I'm going to do that for 2 minutes. This is another practice hack. Don't leave your practice time open-ended on any of your exercises. Have a specific amount of time you're going to do something. If you're going to warm up for 2 minutes, warm up for 2 minutes. If you're going to do a particular exercise for 3 minutes, do it for 3 minutes. With this app, I do have a clock that I can set. I have the time here on my iPad, so I'm going to use that so that we don't have this annoying alarm go off every time the 3 minutes happens or the 2 minutes happens. But the point is, if I'm going to do that warm up, I'm not going to warm up until I feel warmed up. I'm going to do it for a specific amount of time, 2 minutes. Now, I may have 2 or 3 tempos that I'm going to do that at. I may come up here to say 85 or 90 beats a minute. And I'm trying to focus instead of thinking about camera angles and talking to you. Really trying to think about just relaxing and locking into the metronome, working on my dynamic range. The idea here is that I'm going to focus for that 2 minutes, and the objective here is super consistent. Stay with the click. Make sure that my left foot and my right hand are locked in together, no matter where I am in my dynamic range. Okay, so in my practice, I would do that for 2 minutes. To keep this interesting, I'm going to think about my hand position. I'm going to think about where I am dynamically. I'm going to listen to the click and see how well am I locked in with that thing. Is it starting to drift as I get louder or softer? Am I starting to, for some reason, is there something that causes my left foot to come out of sync with whichever hand is leading at the time? I'm really trying to think about everything that is specifically about playing. At any point, if you go on autopilot as you're doing this, you've got to do something to get yourself back into focus. Remember, we're only doing this for 2 minutes. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that I stay focused. Okay, now I picked that exercise specifically because now the next thing that I may work on, if that's what I've chosen to work on. In this case, my regiment includes doing those same single strokes, but we're going to introduce the accent. And then I'm also going to want to, because I'm at the drum set, I want to incorporate some of the feet. So in this case, I'm going to put what some people call the samba rhythm, which is just dotted 8/16 on the right foot, upbeats on the left. So it's just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I'm going to play that exercise, and I'm going to start to cycle through. This is one step up from what I started with my warm-ups. I'm going from just moving the left foot, playing some simple single strokes. Now we're going to increase the difficulty level, also increase the amount of engagement I have to use mentally as I'm practicing. It's not as easy for me to go on autopilot with this next one. So let's go back down to 60 beats a minute, because slow and consistent is what we're working for. based on that tempo and the time I've set for myself, I may have decided I'm going to do, in this case, I was just doing a set number of bars for each one of those accent exercises. And so for me, when I get to the end of that cycle, if all I'm trying to do is move through those single accents and double accents, once I move through that, if I'm satisfied with the performance, if I don't think it can get locked down a little bit better, if I don't think I can make it a little tighter, I won't go back through it a second time. If this is a brand new concept, yeah, I may cycle through that thing 2 or 3 or 4 times, but again, it's on a timer of sorts, even if it's just a mental timer. If I've given myself 5 minutes to work on this, I'm only going to work on this for 5 minutes, and I'm only going to make whatever improvements that I can make over a 5-minute period. That's the important part, is when you're working on a brand new exercise. This is a warm-up, so it's a little bit different, but if this were a brand new exercise for me, I'm not going to sit and work on that exercise from start to finish until I feel like I've mastered it. I'm going to get it as good as I can get it in the 5 minutes I'm given for it. Now, if you want to practice it for 10 minutes, then practice it for 10 minutes. See how much further you can get. You will get to where you want to go faster if you practice longer. If I do it for 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, obviously at a certain point there's diminishing returns, but if I do that thing for 10 minutes, I'll get there faster. I may get there today. I might get there tomorrow. If I only do it 5 minutes, it may take me a couple of days. When I'm practicing guitar right now, I'm trying to go from a G chord to a D chord. And I've spent an entire week at this point. The majority of my practice time is cleanly getting from a G to a D chord. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but it's a very difficult move. If you've never played guitar before, you have no idea what I'm talking about. If you play guitar forever, you've forgotten how hard it is to go between those two chord shapes. Instead of doing 20 other things with the time that I have, one of my 3 objectives for that half hour is, can I get from G to D? And I'll spend 10 minutes working on that. If I spent the whole 30, yeah, I could probably get there faster, but there's at least 2 other things I need to learn. So know how much time you're going to do this. If you're going to warm up, which you should be doing in all of your practice sessions, you should warm up. You should know which of these exercises that you're going to do. Know how long you're going to warm up for. For me, it's about 15 minutes. You're not going to feel completely warm at the end of 15 minutes. Fingers may still feel a little iffy. Let's say if you're a double bass drum person, you may not fully get both feet engaged in that 15 minutes. So I'm going to decide 15 minutes is what I'm practicing. I'm going to spend 5 minutes on those single stroke exercises with just the left foot playing quarter notes. I'm going to spend another 5 minutes doing those progressive accent exercises, and I'm only doing 1 and 2 accents. Again, I'm really drilling down. Instead of going through all of the possibilities, I may not go through all those accents in my warm-up. I may just do 1 accent and 2 accents. But the point is, I know exactly what I'm going to do on that particular day. I know how long I'm going to play each exercise. It's not open-ended. You're going to see this same approach go through all of the stuff that we're going to do. So now, let's talk about when you've got brand new concepts. I'm going to pull that linear sheet out that I had before. And let's say you've never done linear ideas before. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to start slow with these. And the general tendency with most of my students is to try and get this thing up and running as fast as you can, at the fastest tempo you can. I'm going to push you the other way. We're going to do this as slow as we can for as long as we can until it feels good. Let's look at this sheet for a second. I'll show you the sheet in the overhead. So this is a good example of the kind of thing that I would give a student. So I'll show it to you here. And so this is out of one of the Gary Chafee books, actually. So there are 8 single bar exercises here at the top half of the page. And then the 3 at the bottom, 9, 10, 11, are combination exercises where they'll take 2 beats of one exercise and pair it with 2 beats of another. So here's how most of my students will practice a page like this. They'll get this page, and we'll talk about it in lessons. We may work on the first couple of these in our lesson time. And then when they go to sit down and practice, they're going to work 1 and 2 on the very first day that they practice. And depending on how much they get it down, they'll finish their practice day on 1 and 2. When they come back the next day, they're going to go right back to 1 and 2. And that's not what I would suggest for you to do with your practice time. If we're doing this slow, we're doing this at a rate where we can figure it out and play it clean and play it correctly, then the next day you're going to take a look at just 3 and 4. That's all you're going to do, 3 and 4. The next day, you're going to take a look at 5 and 6. The next day, you're going to take a look at 7 and 8. The goal in this case, and if I were to give this to a student, the goal would be get through 1 through 8 in a week. If all you ever do with your practice time is you start at the top left of the page and try to work toward the bottom right of the page as you feel you've gotten these mastered, or you feel like you can do them competently, you're going to get really good at this. You're going to get great at number 1. You're going to get a little bit less, but almost equally as great at number 2. You're going to be a little less great at 3. You're going to be average at 4 and 5. And by the time you hit 8, you'll always stink at number 8. Why? Because we're always starting here. The thing I need you to realize is that in a block of information like this, every one of these exercises strengthens every other exercise. So for example, I'm going to play this very first exercise for you. I should have probably preloaded it into our system here, but I'm going to play this for you as if I'd never actually played it before. Check this out. That's one time through the exercise. I played it slow enough so that I could think about every single piece of what I'm doing. And I could make sure that in this case, because I've got dynamic markings, especially dynamic markings in the left hand, I have some accented stuff and some unaccented stuff in the left hand. I'm going to make sure that I play it slow enough that I can think about every one of those moves. Now, once I can play it once and stop, again, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Today, my objective may just be to be able to play 1 or 1 and 2, and to be able to play them really slow without a metronome, and be able to get through them cleanly 4 times. So how do we get to 4 times? And maybe I'm giving myself 5 minutes to do this. I'm only going to play it once. And then once I can play it once, maybe a couple of times, I'm confident that I'm pretty good at that tempo, I'm going to go for twice. Guess what? You're practicing. And not only are you practicing, you're wiring this stuff in the right way. My practice hack for you in this case is start from the very beginning, wiring this into your brain the right way. Our brain's a lot like a computer in the fact that we can feed information to it. And if we've got good information, Chat GPT is the big thing now. Depending on the kind of information you feed into it and the information it pulls from wherever it pulls information from, the results may vary with Chat GPT. If all of the information that it gets pulled in, your prompts are great, all the information it pulls in from the rest of the world's information, if all that information is good, it's going to spit out great information. Your brain's a lot like that. If we work from the very, very beginning, make sure that you put everything into your brain the right way the first time, and we gradually speed that up very systematically, very methodically. Purposeful, deliberate. That's the 2 things from Anders Ericsson's research. Purposeful, deliberate. I'm very deliberate. I'm very purposeful. The idea here is that we want to plug the right thing into our brain and also into our muscles. Your muscles have a memory. So if I plug that thing in wrong, and I just continue to practice the thing wrong, I'm not going to figure out, especially if I'm trying to go too fast and I plug it in wrong, I'm not going to eventually figure out how to play it right. The idea is to do this at a tempo that you can think about everything and execute. You can actually execute well. It's about 32 beats a minute. It's flipping slow. .32 beats a minute. I'm going to play that if I have 5 minutes, and maybe it's day 2, 32 beats a minute is my target tempo for that day. I'm going to play that. I might play it for a solid minute. If I've gotten to where I can cycle through it without messing up, which hopefully you have at that point, I'm going to play that exercise. If I have 5 minutes to work on these, then today I might just play 1 and 2. Tomorrow I'm going to cycle through 3 and 4 at 32 beats a minute. Then I'll do 5 and 6, 7 and 8. Over the course of a week, I might be able to go through and actually make my way through all 8 of those exercises and play them clean. Play them clean, play them in time, be able to work on those. Now from there, where does it go? Well, from there, I might decide, okay, now my target tempo for this week for all those exercises is going to be 50 beats a minute. And so I'm going to go right back through. Let's say I'm back on Monday. I'm going to go through, except I'm not going to start on 1 and 2. I'm going to start on 7 and 8 on Monday. I'm going to put 7 and 8. I'm not going to go from 32 to 50. I'm going to go 32 to 36. That's 4 beats a minute faster. Now here's your growth hack for this. If you get through 8 bars of that in 30 seconds and you feel good about it, don't play it for 2 minutes. Jump it up another 4 or 5 beats a minute. Here's 43. So right there, I'm already, in a matter of minutes, gone from 32 to 43. That's 11 beats per minute faster than I could do it at the beginning of the practice session. So if you plug in that 43, you play it for 8 bars, it feels good. You look at the time, you're like, I still got a minute left. Go ahead and bump that thing up again. Bump it to 45 and stay at 45. You know, the goal is 50 beats a minute. I'm going to answer your question here in just a second, Blitz. So the idea would be, all right, well, I'm going to get through the first few days. Maybe you can do all 4 of the first 4 at 43. Great, man. Cross that off. You don't have to get to 50 today. You got to the end of the week to get to 50. Now, if you get through 1 through 8 and you're 2 or 3 days in and it's 43, I might decide in my practice time, I'm going to take 10 or 12 minutes and see if I can get all of these to 50 beats a minute. 10 or 12 minutes. That's all I'm going to spend on it. Just getting it to that tempo. And so that will be the goal for today. Now I'm adding some novelty. This is another one of our hacks. I'm not going to practice the exact same thing the exact same way. I may not even practice the exact same bank of stuff the exact same way every single day. In some cases, my goal is going to be different, or how I practice is going to be different. The order I practice things is going to be different. I'm adding novelty. Novelty is going to be one of the things that we're going to introduce into our practice time. If you practice the same exercises every single day the same way, you're going to get bored. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to see very much progress. Practicing these things, you've got a family. In this case, with these linear ideas, there's a family of ideas that any one of these that I'm going to work in this first 8 is going to strengthen any of the other 8. But then my method changes. There are going to be some days when, once I've got this under my hands, I'm not going to continue to practice just 2. I'm going to come in on a particular day. If I'm up to 50 beats a minute and I need to get to 60 beats a minute, I may practice all 8. I may go straight from 1 to 8 if I feel good about it in my brain and I feel good about it in my hands. If I feel like I can get from 1 to 8, and I may start lower. I may say, well, I can play this at 50, but I've never played them all the way down. I'm going to go to 40. I'm going to play 2 bars of every one all the way down at 40. If that feels great, it might have taken me a minute and a half. So I may try and get down the entire page, and that's my objective today. And since I'm not practicing the exact same thing, the exact same way, it's the same family of information, but a different method to get get through it, it's going to be a little bit more novel. It presents a different kind of challenge for me as I go through and I try to assimilate this material that I'm working on. And practice in this way, it might take you an entire month to really get to a level of where you feel like you've got high competence. I won't say mastery. Mastery is when we start putting this stuff into music. But I would tell you that it may take you a month to get to where you're at a tempo like 80 or 90 or 100 beats a minute when you started at 30. If it takes you a month, it takes you a month. The only way that you get faster on these, that you assimilate this information quicker, is to spend more time on it. Spend more of the right time on it. So if you only give 5 minutes a day to this, then maybe you give 10 minutes a day to it. Maybe you give 15 or 20 minutes a day to it. My student Paul that's watching on YouTube right now, that's one of those things that we're going through right now is, all right, how do we get from 30 minutes to an hour? When we get to an hour, what do we do to get to 2 hours worth of practice a day? And trying to build him up to what hopefully will be a 3-hour-a-day practice schedule as he's going through high school and get ready for college. There's a lot of information we got to cover in a matter of a few years to get him ready for college. And the only way we're going to get through that is just putting in the time. The right kind of time, the right kind of information, the right way. That's the only way that any of this stuff happens. We can talk about it in some kind of other video, but I'm not a naturally gifted drummer. It's just that I've practiced this way for more than 35 years at this point, I believe. One of the other hacks, if you're always practicing with a metronome, kind of doing yourself a disservice. Let me pull up this one particular thing. So let's say I got this thing up to 75 beats a minute. Is that what this is? Yeah, 75 beats a minute. The other thing that I always do with all the exercises is I play along with some kind of music. And whether you pull this kind of stuff up on Spotify or Apple Music, or in this case, I actually took something and made a loop for myself. You want something that's fairly repetitive. If you're just pulling stuff off the shelf, there's a lot of cool lo-fi beats stuff that's on Spotify. They're entire playlists. You can actually search by BPM. So if you do lo-fi beats, 60 beats a minute, you'll find a playlist full of stuff. Yeah, so I put together a loop from some music. This is 75 beats a minute. Let's listen to this, and then we're going to talk about how to put an exercise like this to this music. All right, so let's listen to. You'll hear the click on this. Hopefully, it's coming through my cans correctly. Here's a loop at 75 beats a minute. So there's a little bit of a drum loop that's going on in there. There's a bass line and there's a rhythm section. I'm going to pull it's smooth jazz. It's not power metal, sorry. But the point is, this is at 75 beats a minute. And so once you've worked up past 75 beats a minute, you want to start putting some of these ideas with music. Now, at first, you may not be able to put the entire thing with this music. You may not be comfortable enough with hearing it. So you can break these things up. Like I'm going to break up the main concept that's in all those linear exercises, which is basically just right foot and right hand. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. I'm going to break that up and just play that along with this first to make sure that I've got it seated in. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of that exercise with this. Here it comes. So that's the first beat of the exercise. The second beat of the exercise, I'll put that with the music too. See if I can do one snippet of those two ideas. ditch the click now, and I'm just going to play with the music. We'll take the click out just so I'm really feel like I'm playing with a band. 2 minutes. Remember we were talking about duration. I don't have this set up on a permanent loop. It's only 2 minutes long. So again, if I'm only going to practice something for a specific amount of time, then I'm only setting up that much time, because once you're really getting into this, it's easy to you get kind of in a groove with it where you might go for 10 minutes and just lose 10 minutes worth of time. Not a bad thing if you're open-ended, but the idea is you get a minimal amount of time, set it up to where you only do something. So let's do it for 2 minutes with no click. I'm just going through, and now when I take the click out especially, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it sound like music. It's an exercise, but I'm trying to make it sound like it belongs in this piece of music. Sometimes you may play one of these exercises and it totally doesn't fit with the music. That's fine. You're using it as the bridge between playing an idea with a metronome and playing the idea with the band. At a certain point, you can play, that's one of the reasons I like the lo-fi loop thing as opposed to something else when I'm learning a new concept, because I can almost get in like this Zen-like flow state. It goes back to the book that I talked about at the very, very beginning of this video more than an hour ago, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I know I'm mispronouncing his name, but just Flow Mihai. If you go to Amazon, you'll find it. That's one of the things they talk about in a flow state, is if you can get in this kind of Zen-like headspace, then you can establish more flow with your playing. So if I'm really trying to make these new concepts seed in the way I play faster, I got to get into that flow state. And music like this, loops like this, stuff like this, playing along with, once I really get it under my hands with the metronome, when I start to pick tracks like this where I can really sit inside of it and try and make it sound like music. In this case, take the click track out and really kind of feel it as if you're playing with a band. It can bridge that gap from playing concepts and vocabulary just with a metronome to being able to get on stage or in the studio with these musical vocabulary ideas and be able to execute them in a way that sounds musical. It doesn't sound like you're doing an exercise. So you'll notice that at a certain point, I unlinearized this and tried to incorporate putting a crash cymbal in on one. I felt good enough about it. A lot of times what I'll do with, and I do this in Pro Tools, and in Ableton Live, is I'll load in something and you can increase or decrease the tempo and it'll time stretch it. Ableton's great for it. Logic does it. GarageBand does it too, I believe. You can just load the thing in, change the tempo. It'll change the tempo of the loop for you. So if I'm playing along with a bass loop in, say, GarageBand or Logic, if it's at 75 beats a minute, I need it slower, I'll slow it down. It'll slow the loop down as well. So that's another great way to be able to hack your practice time, make it more enjoyable. And we're really trying to bridge the gap between learning a new piece of information, a new concept, and being able to play it in some music with other people. And this is some great hacks, some great ways to do this in your practice time. Now, the next step for this would be to actually fire up a full song and try and insert that. We don't have time to talk about this because we've been on the live stream for an hour and a half at this point. And I hope that you've gotten a ton of information about this. Like I said at the beginning of the live stream, over on my Drum Corner site, drumcorner.net, I'm putting together an entire course on how to learn, not just how to practice, but how to learn. And we're going to do an interesting thing where instead of waiting till I've completed the entire course, we're going to roll it out in 4 to 8 parts a month over the course of the year. So you know, the first month we'll roll out the first 4 to 8 videos. The next month you'll get 4 to 8 videos more. Like by the time we're done, there's about 8 or 10 hours worth of content right now that I've got plugged in and already written for this course. And so we'll do it progressively. All the courses at drumcorner.net are going to be that way going forward. They're going to be progressive in how we introduce them on the site. And instead of waiting till I finish a course, we'll have the first batch of videos done, put them up, then put another batch up the next month, that kind of thing. So yeah, we're an hour and a half in. I hope you got a ton of information out of this. I appreciate you coming and hanging out. If you've got questions and you're watching this on the on-demand version, the taped version, if you will, just leave your questions in the comments. I'm really good about going into comments and answering those, especially if you're over on YouTube. I'm answering questions all through the day on YouTube. So that's everything I got for you. I really appreciate you so much. Listen, be awesome to everybody that you meet. Be extra awesome to yourself. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.